Hello, this is Harrison Walton, and you are listening to Effective Communication Skills, a clear communication audiobook, provided to you by United Audiobooks. I hope you enjoy my audiobook. Now let us begin.
Introduction. The biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw. Have you ever left a conversation feeling completely misunderstood, or walked away from an interaction wondering if you and the other person were even speaking the same language? If so, you're far from alone. The gap between what we intend to communicate and what others actually receive creates the backdrop for countless personal and professional difficulties. I created this audiobook because I've witnessed the profound impact that communication has on every aspect of our lives. Through my work with executives, team leaders, couples, and individuals across different walks of life, I've seen how the ability to communicate effectively isn't just a nice skill to have, it's the fundamental currency of human connection. Consider James, a brilliant software engineer whose technical expertise was unmatched, but whose team was on the verge of collapse. During our coaching sessions, James confessed that despite his knowledge, he couldn't seem to explain his ideas in ways that motivated his team. His frustration was palpable. I know exactly what needs to be done, but I can't get anyone to listen. Through focused work on his communication approach, particularly learning to match his message to his audience's need, James transformed his leadership style. 6 months later, his team's productivity had increased by 40%, and more importantly, turnover had dropped to 0. Or take Maria, a devoted mother who found herself in constant conflict with her teenage daughter. "We love each other deeply," she told me, tears in her eyes. "But every conversation turns into a battlefield." By learning to listen with genuine curiosity, rather than preparing her next response, Maria built a bridge of understanding that transformed their relationship. The techniques that helped her, active listening, emotional awareness, and mindful response, form the backbone of this audiobook. The Journey Toward Connection. The chapters that follow aren't just about communicating more clearly, though you'll certainly learn to do that. They're about creating genuine connections through words and beyond them. Effective communication is about 20% technique and 80% understanding the human element, the fears, desires, and needs that drive every interaction. I've designed this audiobook as a practical guide, moving from the foundations of self-awareness through the complexities of navigating difficult conversations. You'll find exercises that build your emotional intelligence, frameworks for structuring challenging messages, and real-world examples that demonstrate these principles in action. My approach draws from diverse fields: cognitive psychology, linguistic research, conflict resolution studies, and my own 20 years of experience helping people transform their communication patterns. But I've worked hard to distill these insights into accessible, immediately applicable strategies that don't require a degree in psychology to implement. Beyond words. This audiobook is for anyone who recognizes that better communication leads to better living. Whether you're a team leader trying to inspire innovation, a partner working to deepen intimacy, or simply someone who wants to move through the world with greater ease and connection, you'll find valuable tools here. You don't need any special background knowledge to benefit from this audiobook, just a willingness to look honestly at your current patterns and practice new approaches. The journey may sometimes feel uncomfortable. Growth often does, but I promise the results are worth it. I'm deeply grateful to the hundreds of clients who have trusted me with their communication challenges over the years. Their courage in facing difficult conversations and their commitment to growth have taught me more than any textbook ever could. Special thanks to my colleagues at the Communication Research Institute, who reviewed my early drafts and offered invaluable feedback. And my deepest appreciation goes to you. By starting this audiobook, you've taken the first step toward transformation. Communication isn't just something we do, It's the very fabric of our human experience, the means by which we share our inner worlds and understand others. Your commitment to improving this fundamental skill will ripple outward in ways you can't yet imagine. Thank you for allowing me to be your guide on this journey. Let's begin exploring the art and science of human connection, one conversation at a time. Discover the hidden patterns shaping your communication. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling misunderstood, even though you tried to express yourself clearly? I've been there too, replaying the moment in my mind, wondering what I could have said differently. Communication is more than words. It's a reflection of our emotions, beliefs, and unspoken intentions. When these elements are misaligned, even the most sincere message can lose its meaning. Over the years, I've learned that effective communication begins with self-awareness. The way we listen, react, and interpret others is shaped by internal patterns we rarely notice. Once you understand those patterns, every interaction begins to shift. You start hearing what's really being said, speaking with clarity, and connecting with others on a deeper, more authentic level. To help you strengthen your communication from the inside out, I've collaborated with Books for Growth to bring you the free What is Your Psychological Archetype quiz. It's a simple yet revealing tool designed to help you understand the patterns that shape the way you connect, listen, and express yourself. Think of it as a mirror that reflects your natural communication energy, clear, insightful, and deeply personal. If you're ready to communicate with more confidence, empathy, and authenticity, your next step begins here. Take the quiz now by visiting quiz.booksforgrowth.com to get started. That's quiz.books4growth.com. Again, quiz.booksforgrowth.com. Chapter 1. The Power of Empathy and Emotional Intelligence. The unseen art behind every great conversation. In a world increasingly driven by digital interaction and fast-paced communication, our ability to truly connect with others has never been more valuable or more endangered. Each day we navigate countless exchanges, from morning greetings with family members to critical workplace discussions. Yet, how many of these interactions leave us feeling genuinely understood? The gap between speaking and truly communicating remains one of modern life's most persistent challenges. The cornerstone of meaningful human connection isn't found in perfect grammar or an extensive vocabulary. Rather, it lies in our capacity to understand ourselves and others at an emotional level. Emotional intelligence and empathetic communication function as twin foundations upon which all effective interaction is built. When we develop these competencies, conversations transform from mere exchanges of information into opportunities for genuine understanding, growth, and connection. What distinguishes a forgettable interaction from one that builds lasting rapport? The difference typically traces back to how well we recognize, understand, and respond to the emotional undercurrents present in every exchange. The most skilled communicators intuitively sense these currents, adjusting their approach to navigate emotional waters with confidence and sensitivity. The skill isn't merely nice to have, it's essential for anyone seeking to influence, connect with, or lead others effectively. Throughout this audiobook, you'll discover practical frameworks for enhancing your communication toolkit, beginning with the foundational elements of emotional awareness and empathy. This first chapter establishes why these elements deserve priority in your development journey. We'll examine how emotional intelligence amplifies your message's impact, how empathetic listening creates psychological safety, and how these skills combine to help you handle even the most challenging conversations with grace and effectiveness. Beyond words, the hidden dimensions of communication. This audiobook will reveal how communication operates on multiple levels simultaneously. You'll learn to recognize that only a fraction of our message is conveyed through words alone. Tone, body language, emotional resonance, and contextual awareness all play crucial roles in determining whether your intended meaning reaches its destination intact. As you progress through subsequent chapters, you'll build upon this foundation, exploring how to adapt your communication style across different contexts, how to navigate conflict productively, and how to use these skills to influence with integrity. When we fail to account for the emotional dimension of communication, we risk creating disconnection rather than rapport. Think about recent misunderstandings in your life. How many stemmed from technically correct words delivered without emotional attunement? Throughout our exploration, you'll develop practical techniques for bridging this gap, learning to speak both to minds and hearts simultaneously. This balanced approach creates the conditions for mutual understanding that powers effective teamwork, leadership, and personal relationships alike. The journey toward communication mastery isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to practice greater awareness, sensitivity, and skill. As we move through the chapters ahead, you'll gain concrete strategies for navigating difficult conversations, providing feedback that motivates rather than deflates, and creating environments where open, honest dialogue can flourish. The principles you'll discover apply equally to professional settings and personal relationships, making them invaluable across all domains of your life. The capacity to communicate with emotional intelligence represents perhaps the single most transformative skill you can develop. When mastered, it doesn't merely change conversations, it changes relationships, opportunities, and outcomes. As we begin this exploration together, I invite you to approach each concept not just as information to absorb, but as a practice to embody. The true measure of success will be found not in what you know about communication, but in how your interactions evolve and the connections you build along the way. The silent symphony of unspoken words. The city buzzed outside the window of Robert's office. He sat at his desk, the afternoon sun cutting sharp rectangles across the polished wood. A stack of performance reviews waited for his signature, but his mind lingered on the morning's executive meeting. 5 senior managers, all capable professionals, had dissolved into tense silence and clipped responses after he had announced the department restructuring. The memory of their faces, tight jaws, averted eyes, played in his thoughts like a discordant note. Robert loosened his tie and swiveled his chair toward the window. The traffic below moved in organized chaos, cars stopping and starting in a rhythm that seemed more harmonious than the human interactions he'd navigated that morning. He thought of Sarah, his most experienced manager, and how her voice had tightened when she asked about team reassignments. He had answered with facts and timelines, efficient and clear. But something had been missing. The facts weren't the problem. His delivery carried no recognition of what the changes meant to her. 20 years at the company, and her world was shifting. He had offered no acknowledgement of that reality. "You wanted to see me?" David stood at the doorway, his lanky frame filling the space. Robert's newest hire is brilliant with numbers, but struggling with the team. 3 complaints in 2 months about his abrupt style. "Yes, come in." Robert gestured to the chair across from him. He had planned this conversation during his morning shower, a clear, direct feedback session about professional communication standards. Now, looking at David's tense shoulders and the uncertainty in his eyes, Robert paused. He remembered his own early days, the fear of failure that had masked itself as brusqueness. "Before we start, how are you settling in?" Really settling in, not just the work. Something in David's expression shifted. His hands, which had been gripping the chair arms, relaxed. "It's different from my last place. Faster. I'm trying to keep up, prove myself." The admission hung in the air between them. Robert nodded. feeling the weight of the younger man's words. 6 months ago, he would have noted the information and moved to his agenda. Now he recognized the fear beneath the statement, the same fear that had likely driven David's interactions with colleagues. The revelation sparked in him not just understanding, but a connection, a bridge built of shared human experience rather than corporate hierarchy. Outside, the sky had deepened to burnt orange. The day winding down as something new opened up in the room. Robert leaned forward, his prepared speech forgotten. What mattered now was not what he had planned to say, but what David needed to hear, and perhaps what Robert himself needed to learn about leading with more than just his intellect. How might we transform our workplaces if we saw communication not just as an exchange of information, but as an act of genuine human connection? The foundations of connection. Emotional intelligence and empathetic communication form the bedrock of meaningful human interaction. At their core, these interconnected competencies enable us to recognize, understand, and effectively respond to emotions, both our own and others. Emotional intelligence encompasses the ability to identify and manage our emotional responses, while empathetic communication involves actively listening and responding with understanding to others' perspectives. Together, these skills create a powerful toolkit that transforms how we connect with those around us. Think of these skills as the invisible infrastructure supporting every conversation you have. Just as a city relies on its roads, water systems, and electrical grid to function smoothly, our relationships depend on the emotional pathways we build through understanding and empathy. When this infrastructure is strong, communication flows effortlessly. When it's weak or damaged, misunderstandings and conflicts arise, blocking the path to genuine connection. Research consistently shows that individuals with higher emotional intelligence experience greater success across various life domains. A study published in the Journal of Organizational Behavior found that professionals with well-developed emotional intelligence reported higher job satisfaction, demonstrated better performance, and experienced less burnout than their colleagues. Similarly, in personal relationships, emotionally intelligent individuals tend to navigate conflicts more effectively and maintain healthier, more satisfying connections with partners, family members, and friends. The benefits extend far beyond individual relationships. Organizations increasingly recognize that emotionally intelligent teams collaborate more effectively, innovate more readily, and adapt to change with greater resilience, according to research from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. Workplaces that foster emotional intelligence report lower turnover rates, higher employee engagement, and improved customer satisfaction. These outcomes directly impact bottom-line results, demonstrating that soft skills translate to hard benefits. Empathy serves as the bridge between emotional intelligence and effective communication. When we communicate empathetically, we don't simply transmit information, we create shared understanding. This involves actively listening without judgment, acknowledging others' feelings as valid, and responding in ways that demonstrate genuine understanding. Such communication creates psychological safety, encouraging others to express themselves honestly without fear of dismissal or criticism. Consider how differently conversations unfold when empathy is present versus absent. Without empathy, a colleague sharing concerns about a project might be met with dismissive solutions or impatient interruptions. With empathy, the same concerns become an opportunity for collaboration and deeper understanding. The content of the message might be identical, but the emotional wrapper transforms how it's received and processed. The interconnection between emotional intelligence and empathetic communication operates as a virtuous cycle. As we develop greater awareness of our own emotions, we become better equipped to recognize and respond to others' emotional states. This improved response, in turn, enhances our relationships, providing more opportunities to further refine our emotional intelligence. The cycle continues, strengthening our connections and expanding our capacity for meaningful interaction. Developing these competencies requires intentional practice and self-reflection. Like any valuable skill, emotional intelligence and empathetic communication improve with conscious effort over time. Simple practices like pausing before responding in heated moments, asking clarifying questions instead of making assumptions, or regularly reflecting on emotional triggers can gradually transform how we engage with others. These small adjustments compound to create significant shifts in our relationships. This interconnected skill set proves equally valuable across contexts. Same emotional awareness that helps a manager provide constructive feedback to team members also enables a parent to respond effectively to a child's frustration. The empathetic listening that strengthens romantic relationships similarly builds trust with colleagues. These are universal human competencies that transcend specific roles or relationships, making them among the most versatile skills we can develop. The ability to understand emotions, both our own and others, and communicate with empathy forms the essential foundation for authentic connection in every aspect of life. The leadership dimension. Leadership effectiveness correlates strongly with emotional and communicative competence. The data is compelling. Leaders who excel in emotional intelligence consistently outperform their peers across multiple metrics. A comprehensive study by the Center for Creative Leadership found that the primary causes of executive derailment involve deficiencies in emotional competence, specifically difficulty handling change, inability to work well in teams, and poor interpersonal relations. These findings highlight that technical expertise alone cannot sustain leadership success without the supporting framework of emotional and communicative skills. Leaders set the emotional tone for their organizations through what psychologists call emotional contagion. This phenomenon describes how emotions spread from person to person, particularly from those in positions of authority to those they lead. When a leader communicates with emotional awareness and empathy, they create a cascade effect throughout their team or organization. Research conducted at the Walton School of Business demonstrated that positive emotional leadership increases group cooperation, decreases conflict, and improves task performance. The opposite also holds true. Leaders who display poor emotional regulation or lack empathy typically foster environments characterized by tension, mistrust, and diminished productivity. Have you ever worked under a leader who seemed emotionally tone-deaf? Perhaps they delivered criticism harshly without regard for its impact, announced major changes without acknowledging the anxiety they might cause, or failed to recognize team achievements. Such leadership approaches create invisible barriers to motivation and engagement. By contrast, emotionally intelligent leaders carefully consider how their words and actions affect others, adjusting their communication to maximize both understanding and psychological safety. The difference resembles that between a conductor who merely keeps time and one who draws out the full emotional range of an orchestra. Technical competence ensures the notes are played correctly and in rhythm, but emotional intelligence transforms those notes into music that resonates deeply with listeners. Similarly, a leader's technical decisions may be sound, but their emotional approach determines whether those decisions inspire commitment or mere compliance from their team. Relationship management represents the culmination of emotional intelligence skills applied to leadership contexts. It encompasses the ability to inspire others, influence them positively, develop their capabilities, manage conflict constructively, and build bonds based on trust and respect. Leaders who excel at relationship management create environments where people feel valued, understood, and motivated to contribute their best work. They achieve this not through manipulation or authority alone, but through authentic connection grounded in emotional awareness and empathetic communication. Consider how this manifests in difficult conversations, perhaps the true test of leadership communication. When delivering challenging feedback or navigating disagreement, emotionally intelligent leaders approach the interaction with a clear awareness of both their own emotional state and the potential impact on the recipient. They create space for dialogue rather than monologue, demonstrate genuine curiosity about different perspectives, and maintain respect even during disagreement. This approach transforms potentially divisive moments into opportunities for growth and deeper connection. The impact extends to change management as well. Organizations constantly navigate shifts in strategy, structure, technology, and market conditions. During such transitions, emotional and communicative competencies become even more crucial. Leaders skilled in these areas recognize that change triggers emotional responses, ranging from excitement to fear, and they address these reactions directly, rather than focusing exclusively on logical arguments or implementation details. By acknowledging the emotional dimension of change, they reduce resistance and build the psychological safety necessary for adaptation and innovation. Research from Google's Project Aristotle reinforces this understanding. After studying hundreds of teams to identify the factors that contribute to effectiveness, researchers discovered that psychological safety, the belief that one won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, emerged as the most significant predictor of team success. Leaders create psychological safety through emotionally intelligent practices, demonstrating vulnerability, showing empathy, actively listening, and responding constructively to challenges or setbacks. The good news is that these skills can be developed with consistent practice. Leadership studies show that emotional intelligence typically increases with age and experience, suggesting that these abilities respond to intentional development. Executive coaching programs focused on emotional intelligence have demonstrated significant improvements in leaders' self-awareness, empathy, and communication effectiveness, with corresponding positive impacts on team climate and organizational outcomes. This developmental approach contrasts with the outdated notion that leaders are born, not made, or that emotional skills are fixed traits rather than learnable competencies. While individuals certainly begin with different baseline tendencies and abilities, the evidence clearly shows that emotionally intelligent leadership can be cultivated through self-reflection, feedback, coaching, and deliberate practice. This understanding democratizes leadership development, making effective leadership accessible to those willing to invest in their emotional and communicative growth. How might your leadership transform if you approached every interaction with the intention to understand emotions, both yours and others, before attempting to be understood? Fostering cooperation through emotional intelligence. Building a truly cooperative environment requires more than good intentions. It demands the systematic application of emotional intelligence and empathy. Research in organizational psychology shows that teams characterized by high emotional intelligence collaborate more effectively, resolve conflicts more constructively, and adapt to challenges more resiliently. These capabilities don't emerge by chance, but through the deliberate practice of specific behaviors that foster understanding and connection. The foundational step in creating cooperation is establishing psychological safety, the shared belief that the environment is safe for the interpersonal risk-taking. When people feel psychologically safe, they readily share ideas, admit mistakes, ask questions, and express concerns without fear of embarrassment or punishment. Leaders and team members foster this safety by responding supportively to vulnerability, acknowledging their own limitations, and treating errors as learning opportunities rather than causes for blame. Imagine a garden where cooperation represents the flowers and fruits you hope to harvest. Emotional intelligence and empathy are the soil, water, and sunlight that make growth possible. Without these nurturing elements, you might see occasional blooms when conditions happen to be favorable, but you won't create the consistent abundance that comes from intentional cultivation. Every empathetic interaction, every emotionally intelligent response enriches this environment, making it more conducive to collaboration and mutual support. Active listening serves as a cornerstone practice for empathetic communication. This involves giving full attention to speakers, seeking to understand before forming responses, and demonstrating that understanding through appropriate feedback. Research indicates that people who feel genuinely heard become more open to different perspectives and more willing to engage collaboratively. Simple techniques such as maintaining eye contact, asking clarifying questions, summarizing what you've heard, and avoiding interruptions significantly enhance listening quality and, by extension, cooperative potential. Conflict resolution represents another critical domain for applying emotional intelligence. Disagreements inevitably arise in any group, but emotionally intelligent approaches transform these moments from relationship threats to opportunities for deeper understanding. Effective conflict resolution begins with emotional awareness, recognizing and regulating your own reactions while acknowledging others' feelings. It continues with perspective taking, seeking to understand different viewpoints without immediately judging their validity. Finally, it involves collaborative problem solving that addresses underlying needs rather than surface positions. Emotional validation, acknowledging and accepting others' feelings as legitimate, creates connections that facilitate cooperation. This doesn't mean agreeing with everyone's perspective or accommodating every preference. Rather, it means recognizing that emotional responses make sense given a person's experiences, values, and perceptions, even when you see things differently. This validation reduces defensiveness and creates openness to dialogue, essential preconditions for genuine cooperation. The CARE framework, cultivating awareness and responsive engagement. The CARE framework integrates key elements of emotional intelligence and empathetic communication into a cohesive system for fostering cooperation. This practical model provides a structured approach to developing and applying these critical skills across various contexts. Component 1. Conscious self-awareness. Self-awareness forms the foundation of emotional intelligence and empathetic communication. Without understanding our own emotional landscape, we cannot effectively navigate others. This component involves recognizing your emotions as they arise, identifying triggers that provoke strong reactions, and understanding how your emotional states influence your perceptions and behaviors. To develop this component, maintain an emotion journal, documenting situations that elicit significant emotional responses. Note the circumstances, your physical sensations, thoughts, and behaviors. Over time, patterns emerge that reveal your emotional tendencies and triggers. Regular self-reflection questions also enhance awareness. What am I feeling right now? Why might I be reacting this way? How might my current emotional state affect my interactions? This foundational awareness creates the necessary conditions for all other components. Without it, attempts at regulation, attunement to others, and relationship management become reactive rather than intentional, undermining cooperative efforts before they begin. Component 2. Attentive regulation. Self-regulation builds upon self-awareness, encompassing strategies to manage emotional responses appropriately. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but channeling them productively. Effective regulation allows you to pause between stimulus and response, creating space for more thoughtful communication that supports cooperation rather than undermining it. Practical techniques include mindfulness practices that strengthen your ability to observe emotions without immediately acting on them. Regular emotional check-ins throughout the day help maintain awareness of your emotional state. The pause practice involves deliberately taking 3 deep breaths before responding in potentially charged situations, creating space for more measured communication. This component complements self-awareness by translating insight into action. Together, they create internal emotional management that enables more effective external engagement. Component 3. Responsive empathy. Social awareness expands focus from internal emotional processes to understanding others' emotional experiences. This component involves recognizing emotional cues, practicing perspective taking, and demonstrating genuine curiosity about others' experiences. Develop this capacity through deliberate observation of emotional signals, facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, and word choice. Practice perspective-taking exercises by imagining situations from others' viewpoints based on what you know of their experiences and values. Ask thoughtful questions that demonstrate interest in understanding rather than judging or problem-solving prematurely. This component connects your internal emotional management with external relationship dynamics. Without responsive empathy, self-awareness, and regulation, it remains self-centered rather than relationship-oriented. Component 4. Expressive communication. Relationship management represents the culmination of the previous components, focusing on how you express yourself emotionally and navigate interpersonal dynamics. This component encompasses constructive emotional expression, conflict resolution, feedback delivery, and collaborative problem-solving. Key practices include using I statements to express feelings without blame. I feel concerned when, rather than you always. Active listening techniques that demonstrate understanding and collaborative conflict resolution approaches that seek mutual benefit rather than victory. Regular check-ins in important relationships provide opportunities to address concerns before they escalate and to express appreciation that strengthens the connection. This final component integrates all previous elements into cohesive relationship practices that directly foster cooperation. It depends on the foundation of self-awareness, the stabilizing influence of self-regulation, and the connective power of social awareness. Dynamic interactions within the framework. The CARE framework operates as an integrated system rather than a linear process. Each component influences and reinforces the others through continuous feedback loops. Greater self-awareness enhances your capacity for regulation. Improved regulation creates space for social awareness. Deeper social awareness informs more effective relationship management, and experiences in relationship management provide new insights that deepen self-awareness, continuing the cycle. This dynamic interaction explains why development in one area often catalyzes growth in others. For instance, practicing active listening, part of relationship management, frequently increases awareness of your own tendency to interrupt or formulate responses prematurely, enhancing self-awareness. This new awareness creates opportunities for improved regulation, which in turn facilitates better listening. Practical applications across contexts. The framework applies across diverse contexts, from workplace teams to family dynamics, from community organizations to intimate partnerships. In professional settings, it supports constructive feedback conversations, collaborative problem-solving, and inclusive decision-making. In personal relationships, it facilitates deeper understanding, more constructive conflict resolution, and stronger emotional bonds. The versatility stems from addressing universal human needs for understanding, respect, and connection. Regardless of context, people respond positively to being seen, heard, and valued. The CARE framework provides practical strategies for meeting these fundamental needs, thereby fostering the psychological safety and trust that underpin genuine cooperation. By integrating self-awareness, emotional regulation, empathetic understanding, and skilled communication, we create environments where cooperation flourishes naturally rather than requiring constant effort. These interconnected competencies transform how we perceive ourselves, relate to others, and navigate the complex emotional terrain of human interaction. Expanding your emotional vocabulary. The journey toward emotional intelligence begins with expanding your emotional vocabulary. Many people operate with a limited emotional lexicon, using broad terms like good, bad, fine, or stressed to describe complex internal states. This limitation restricts both self-awareness and communication effectiveness. Researchers at Yale University found that individuals with more nuanced emotional vocabularies demonstrate better emotional regulation, make more sophisticated decisions, and enjoy stronger relationships. Take a moment to consider the last time you felt bad. Was it disappointment over unmet expectations, frustration with obstacles, embarrassment about a mistake, sadness over a loss? Each of these emotions suggests different needs and appropriate responses. Distinguishing between them enhances your ability to address the underlying issues effectively. Start building your emotional vocabulary by consulting emotion wheels or lists that identify subtle distinctions between related feelings. When checking in with yourself, push beyond general labels to identify specific emotions with greater precision. The emotionally intelligent person knows that strength does not mean ignoring negative emotions to focus on the positive ones, notes psychologist Susan David. It's about holding the full range of emotions, recognizing that these emotions are signals, not directives. This perspective highlights that emotional intelligence isn't about eliminating uncomfortable feelings, but developing a more sophisticated relationship with the full spectrum of human emotion. Practice makes this skill more accessible. Try setting regular check-in times during your day to identify what you're feeling with specificity. This habit gradually builds the neural pathways that support emotional awareness, making the process more automatic over time. As your self-awareness grows, you'll notice increased capacity to recognize and respond to others' emotional states as well, creating a foundation for more empathetic interactions. Creating rituals of connection. Consistency matters more than intensity when building emotionally intelligent environments. Small, regular practices often yield greater results than occasional grand gestures. Research in relationship psychology shows that brief daily rituals of connection significantly strengthen bonds between individuals and create atmospheres conducive to cooperation. These rituals establish predictable opportunities for emotional attunement and meaningful exchange. In professional contexts, simple practices like beginning meetings with brief check-ins allow team members to acknowledge their current emotional states before diving into tasks. This transparency reduces misunderstandings about behaviors or reactions that might otherwise be misinterpreted. Similarly, ending interactions with expressions of appreciation for specific contributions creates positive emotional associations that motivate continued engagement. Family systems benefit from similar rituals, perhaps sharing highs and lows during dinner, expressing gratitude before bed, or creating space for uninterrupted one-on-one time with each family member. These practices communicate that emotions matter and relationships take priority, even amid busy schedules and competing demands. The predictability of such rituals creates security that supports emotional openness and cooperative interaction. The power of these practices lies in their cumulative effect rather than their individual impact. Like compound interest, small emotional investments made consistently over time generate substantial returns in relationship quality and cooperative potential. Start by identifying 1 or 2 simple connection rituals you could implement in your personal or professional life, focusing on sustainability rather than ambition. Even 5 minutes of genuine emotional presence daily creates a more significant impact than occasional hours of distracted interaction. By developing emotional intelligence and practicing empathetic communication consistently, we create environments where cooperation emerges naturally from mutual understanding and respect, rather than requiring constant effort or enforcement. These competencies transform how we perceive ourselves, relate to others, and navigate the complex emotional landscape of human interaction, ultimately enhancing both personal fulfillment and collective achievement. The foundation for meaningful connection. Throughout this chapter, we've explored how emotional intelligence and empathy form the bedrock of effective communication. These aren't just nice-to-have skills, they're essential competencies that transform how we interact with others in every sphere of our lives. The interconnection between recognizing emotions in ourselves and others and communicating with empathy creates a powerful synergy. When you understand what drives human behavior beneath the surface, conversations move beyond mere information exchange to become genuine connections. This deeper understanding prevents the misinterpretations and conflicts that often derail relationships before they've had a chance to flourish. We've seen how these skills directly impact leadership effectiveness. Leaders who communicate with emotional awareness create psychological safety, inspire trust, and motivate teams towards shared goals. Their capacity to read unspoken concerns and address them appropriately transforms their influence from positional authority to genuine leadership. Perhaps most importantly, we've examined practical approaches for creating cooperative environments through empathetic communication. The skills we've discussed don't require extraordinary talent, just conscious practice and genuine intention. Anyone can learn to listen more deeply, validate feelings without necessarily agreeing with positions, and create dialogue that honors different perspectives. Mastering these fundamental competencies isn't just about becoming more likable, though that often happens naturally. It's about developing the relational intelligence needed to navigate an increasingly complex social landscape with confidence and skill. As we move forward in this audiobook, remember that emotional intelligence and empathy serve as the foundation upon which all other communication skills are built. Without them, even the most sophisticated techniques fall flat. With them, even simple interactions can create lasting positive impressions. The journey you've begun here will continue to unfold throughout the coming chapters. You'll discover specific techniques for handling difficult conversations, strategies for clear expression in challenging situations, and frameworks for resolving conflicts productively. Each new skill will build upon this essential foundation. Imagine approaching your next challenging conversation with newfound confidence, seeing beneath surface tensions to understand deeper needs, responding with measured emotional awareness rather than reactive impulses, and creating solutions that honor everyone involved. This transformation isn't just possible, it's within reach as you continue developing these crucial skills. The rewards extend far beyond professional advancement. When you communicate with emotional intelligence and empathy, you create the conditions for authentic connection in all your relationships. You become someone others naturally trust and respect, not because you demand it, but because you've earned it through genuine understanding. Your journey toward masterful communication has only just begun. The skills you're developing won't simply change how you speak, They'll transform how you experience your relationships and ultimately how you navigate your world. Strengthen your inner foundation through self-care. As you've seen, empathy and emotional intelligence are the heart of every meaningful conversation. True connection begins not in how we speak to others, but in how we relate to ourselves. Yet, in trying to listen, support, and care for those around us, we often forget to offer that same understanding inward. If you have ever felt emotionally drained after a conversation, or found yourself struggling to stay patient and centered, it may not be a lack of skill, but a lack of rest. I have learned that effective communication is built not only on empathy for others, but also on the ability to pause, breathe, and renew our own emotional energy. When I began treating self-care as an essential part of my communication practice, everything changed. My thoughts became clearer. My presence deepened. I was able to listen without losing myself in the process. Caring for my inner world became the quiet strength behind every word I spoke. I wanted to offer you something that extends this journey beyond this audiobook. So I've collaborated with Books for Growth to create a free ebook called Empowerment Through Self-Care. It's a gentle companion filled with simple, grounding practices to help you stay centered and connected, no matter what challenges arise. This ebook is completely free, created to support your continued growth and well-being. Take a moment to give yourself the same care and compassion you strive to share with others, and begin restoring the calm confidence that makes every interaction more genuine and alive. You can download your copy directly at selfcare.booksforgrowth.com. That's selfcare.books4growth.com. Again, selfcare.booksforgrowth.com. Chapter 2. Transforming Misunderstandings into Mastery. When miscommunications become your greatest teachers. Misunderstandings aren't just frustrating interruptions in our daily lives. They're hidden opportunities for profound growth. That moment when someone completely misinterprets your meaning, or when you suddenly realize you've been talking past each other for minutes or even days, isn't a failure. It's a doorway to developing communication mastery that can transform every relationship in your life. We've all experienced those moments when communication breaks down. The colleague who took your constructive feedback as harsh criticism. The partner who heard an accusation in what you meant as a simple observation. The friend who missed the point of your story entirely. These moments leave us feeling misunderstood, frustrated, and sometimes even isolated. But what if these very breakdowns could become the foundation for stronger connections? Communication skills aren't fixed traits we're born with. They're muscles that strengthen with deliberate practice. The most skilled communicators aren't those who never face misunderstandings. They're those who have learned to navigate through them effectively. This chapter invites you to reimagine miscommunications, not as roadblocks, but as essential stepping stones toward genuine connection and understanding. Rather than dreading these moments, you'll learn to recognize them as valuable feedback about your communication effectiveness. The hidden gift of being misunderstood. When someone misunderstands you, it's easy to place the blame entirely on them. They weren't listening properly, or they're being deliberately difficult. But effective communicators know better. They recognize that communication is always a two-way street, and every misunderstanding offers valuable data about how your message is being received. These moments highlight exactly where your communication skills need refinement. Throughout this chapter, we'll explore how to transform these challenging moments into opportunities for growth. You'll learn to recognize patterns in your miscommunications, identifying whether you tend to assume too much prior knowledge, speak too abstractly, or perhaps fail to read your audience's emotional state. We'll examine how active listening, not just hearing words, but truly absorbing another's perspective, creates the foundation for clarity and connection. You'll also discover practical feedback mechanisms that serve as early warning systems for potential misunderstandings. These techniques will help you catch communication breakdowns before they escalate into conflicts, saving you countless hours of frustration and relationship repair. By creating regular opportunities to check understanding and clarify meaning, you'll build a communication style that prevents problems rather than simply responding to them. The approaches we'll explore aren't just theoretical. They're battle-tested strategies used by negotiators, therapists, and leadership coaches to navigate high-stakes conversations where clarity is essential. When applied consistently, these techniques don't just prevent misunderstandings, they create a communication environment where people feel genuinely heard and valued. This deeper level of understanding forms the foundation for trust, which in turn enables more honest, productive relationships in every area of your life. By the end of this chapter, you'll view communication difficulties differently. Rather than dreading them, you'll recognize them as your most valuable teachers, highlighting exactly what you need to learn next in your journey toward communication mastery. You'll have concrete tools to transform these challenging moments into opportunities for growth and connection, turning what once might have been relationship setbacks into catalysts for deeper understanding. The space between words. John Morgan stared at his computer screen, the unread emails piling up like autumn leaves. He rubbed his eyes. The morning sun slanted through the blinds, casting tiger stripes across his desk. The coffee beside him had gone cold, a skin forming on its surface. "I don't understand what you want from me," Sarah had said last night, her voice tight with frustration. The memory cut through his concentration. They had argued again, the third time this week, over something that should have been simple. He had tried to explain his concerns about her new job, but his words had tangled and knotted, emerging as criticism instead of care. The office hummed around him. Phones rang in distant cubicles. A printer churned out pages with mechanical persistence. John's mind drifted back to Sarah's face. How her eyes had hardened as he spoke. How she had crossed her arms over her chest like a shield. He knew what he meant to say. Why couldn't she hear it? The question followed him like a shadow. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Can we talk tonight?" John's stomach tightened. He picked up his pen and tapped it against the edge of his desk. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm matched his heartbeat. He thought of his father, a man of few words, who had never learned to bridge the gap between what he felt and what he said. John had inherited that same struggle, that same silence, but he did not want to pass it on, did not want to lose Sarah the way his father had lost connection with everyone around him. The calendar on his desk showed a workshop next week, Effective Communication in the Workplace. John had dismissed it at first, corporate jargon, empty phrases. Now he looked at it with new eyes. Perhaps the problem wasn't Sarah. Perhaps it wasn't even the words themselves, but how he listened, how he responded. The space between intention and interpretation yawned wide. He reached for his phone, thumbs hovering over the screen. Instead of a quick text, he dialed her number. "I want to understand," he would say. Not explain, not defend, just listen. The phone rang once, twice. Outside his window, a bird alighted on a branch, tilting its head as if curious about the human drama unfolding behind the glass. When Sarah answered, John took a deep breath. "I heard you last night," he said, "but I don't think I was listening." The words felt strange in his mouth, unfamiliar but right, like the first step on a new path. The bird outside took flight, a flash of blue against the sky. "Can I try again?" What transformations might occur in our closest relationships if we viewed each misunderstanding not as a failure, but as an invitation to grow, to learn the delicate art of truly hearing another person's heart beneath their words? The silver lining in miscommunication. When we think of communication breakdowns, we typically view them as failures. The missed point, the confused message, the awkward silence, all symptoms of what went wrong. Yet, in these moments of disconnect lie valuable opportunities. Misunderstandings aren't just communication errors, they are signposts showing where our skills need refinement. Each time we struggle to convey our thoughts or grasp someone else's meaning, we're faced with a chance to improve. Consider a garden where plants aren't thriving. A novice gardener might simply see failure, but an experienced one recognizes specific signs of nutrient deficiency, overwatering, or inadequate sunlight. Each yellowing leaf or wilted stem offers information about what needs to change. Our communication missteps function similarly. They reveal precisely which aspects of our communication approach need adjustment. Research consistently shows that the most effective communicators aren't those who never experience confusion, but rather those who leverage misunderstandings as learning opportunities. A study from the Harvard Business Review found that teams that openly discuss communication breakdowns and adjust accordingly showed 23% higher performance outcomes than teams that ignore these issues. This illustrates that our growth potential often lives within these challenging moments, not despite them. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. You don't improve by avoiding falls altogether. That's impossible for beginners. Instead, you learn from each wobble and tumble, making micro adjustments to your balance, grip, and pedaling rhythm. Communication skills develop through a similar process of continuous refinement based on feedback. The most powerful feedback often comes from those moments when our messages don't land as intended. Misunderstandings also highlight cultural and contextual differences in communication styles. What seems perfectly clear to one person may contain cultural assumptions or jargon that creates barriers for others. Recognizing these patterns helps us develop more inclusive and effective communication habits that work across diverse environments. When we frame misunderstandings as learning opportunities rather than failures, we transform our emotional response to them. Instead of frustration or embarrassment, we can experience curiosity and engagement. This shift in perspective keeps us open to growth rather than defensive about our shortcomings. It's particularly valuable in professional settings where effective communication directly impacts performance and relationships. Every misunderstanding contains within it a blueprint for better communication. Tuning in, the art of active listening. Active listening stands as perhaps the most powerful tool for preventing and resolving misunderstandings. Unlike passive hearing, which merely registers sound, active listening engages our full attention and comprehension faculties. It requires us to temporarily set aside our own thoughts, judgments, and plan responses to truly absorb what another person is expressing. This practice dramatically reduces the likelihood of miscommunication while building stronger connections. The components of active listening might seem simple, but they demand consistent practice. Maintaining eye contact, offering verbal and nonverbal feedback, and avoiding interruptions all signal to the speaker that their message matters to you. Research from the International Journal of Listening indicates that most people remember only about 25% of what they hear immediately after someone stops talking. Through active listening techniques, this retention can increase to 75% or higher, drastically reducing potential miscommunications. Have you ever tried to fill a cup that was already full? The liquid simply spills over, wasted. Our minds work similarly when we approach conversations with preconceived notions or rehearsed responses. When we empty our mental cup, clearing away assumptions and prepared arguments, we create space to receive new information. This receptive state forms the foundation of active listening. Many communication experts recommend the solar technique for physical aspects of active listening. Sit squarely facing the speaker, maintain an open posture, lean slightly toward them, make eye contact, and remain relaxed. These physical cues create an environment conducive to open communication, while demonstrating respect and engagement. When combined with attentive mental presence, they create the conditions for genuine understanding. Beyond physical positioning, active listening requires us to detect emotional undertones and unspoken messages. A simple statement like, "I'm fine," carries vastly different meanings depending on tone, context, and body language. The active listener tunes into these signals, asking clarifying questions when necessary. You say you're fine, but your expression suggests something else might be going on. Would you like to talk more about that? The biggest communication problem is that we don't listen to understand. We listen to reply, observes author Stephen R. Covey. This insight highlights how often we sacrifice genuine understanding for quick responses. Breaking this habit requires conscious effort, a commitment to prioritize comprehension over reaction. When we truly listen first, our responses become more thoughtful, relevant, and effective. Reflective listening takes active listening a step further by periodically paraphrasing what you've heard. "So, what I'm understanding is," or "it sounds like you're saying." This practice serves multiple purposes. It confirms your understanding, shows the speaker you're engaged, and gives them an opportunity to clarify if you've misinterpreted something. This continuous feedback loop dramatically reduces the chance of significant miscommunications developing. Consider implementing a 3-second rule in your conversations. Waiting 3 seconds after someone finishes speaking before you respond. This brief pause serves several purposes. It ensures the speaker has completed their thought, gives you time to process what was said, and demonstrates thoughtful consideration rather than reactive responding. The small buffer can substantially improve conversation quality and reduce misunderstandings. The benefits of active listening extend far beyond avoiding misunderstandings. People who feel truly heard experience greater trust, openness, and connection. This creates a virtuous cycle. As others feel understood, they become more willing to listen actively themselves, further enhancing communication quality. Teams and relationships characterized by this mutual listening demonstrate greater cohesion, creativity, and problem-solving capacity. What might change in your relationships if you approached each conversation as an opportunity to understand rather than an opportunity to be understood? Building bridges through feedback. Feedback forms the essential bridge between communication attempts and communication mastery. Without clear, constructive feedback, misunderstandings persist and multiply rather than resolve. Effective feedback mechanisms ensure that communication problems don't just get identified, they get addressed and learned from, creating lasting improvement rather than temporary fixes. Good feedback systems function like the navigation recalculation on GPS apps. When you take a wrong turn while driving, the app doesn't criticize or ignore the error. It simply acknowledges the current position and provides updated directions. Similarly, effective feedback in communication acknowledges where things stand currently and offers clear direction on how to get back on track. This approach removes blame while providing practical correction. Creating safe spaces for feedback requires deliberate effort. Research shows that people are far more likely to share honest feedback when they feel psychologically safe, meaning they believe they won't be punished or embarrassed for speaking up. Leaders and communicators can foster this safety by demonstrating openness to criticism themselves, responding constructively to feedback, and explicitly inviting input from others. The timing of feedback significantly impacts its effectiveness. Immediate feedback addresses issues while context remains fresh, but it may trigger defensive reactions if delivered when emotions run high. Delayed feedback allows for cooler heads, but risks forgetting important details. Finding the right balance, typically providing brief acknowledgement in the moment with more detailed discussion later, often yields the best results for complex or sensitive communications. The MRF, Misunderstanding Resolution Framework. The Misunderstanding Resolution Framework, MRF, offers a structured approach for transforming communication breakdowns into learning opportunities by following its three phases: recognition, response, and reflection. Individuals can systematically address miscommunications while developing stronger communication skills. Phase 1. Recognition. Recognition begins with awareness, the ability to detect when communication has gone awry. This phase requires sensitivity to verbal and nonverbal cues indicating confusion, disagreement, or disengagement. Signs might include furrowed brows, crossed arms, sudden silences, or disconnected responses. By developing this awareness, communicators can address issues before they escalate. Active confirmation techniques play a crucial role in this phase. Rather than assuming mutual understanding, effective communicators periodically check for comprehension. Simple questions like, "Does that make sense?" or "What's your take on this?" create opportunities to identify misalignments early. More sophisticated approaches include asking listeners to paraphrase key points in their own words, revealing any interpretation gaps. The recognition phase also involves acknowledging the misunderstanding without blame. Statements like, "I think we might be talking past each other," or "I'm not sure I've explained that clearly," create space to address the issue without triggering defensiveness. This neutrality maintains the psychological safety needed for productive resolution. Phase 2. Response. Once a misunderstanding has been recognized, the response phase focuses on clarification and correction. This phase employs specific communication techniques designed to bridge gaps in understanding while preserving the relationship between communicators. Open-ended questions form the foundation of effective responses. Questions beginning with "what," "how," or "could you tell me more about" invite explanation rather than yes/no answers. For example, rather than asking, "Did you understand my point about the deadline?" which often elicits a reflexive yes regardless of actual understanding, asking, "What's your plan for meeting this deadline?" reveals their actual comprehension. Paraphrasing serves as another powerful response technique, demonstrating active engagement while checking understanding. By restating the other person's message in your own words, "So you're concerned that the timeline is too aggressive given our current resources," you create an opportunity for them to confirm or correct your interpretation. This technique simultaneously validates their perspective while ensuring alignment. The response phase also involves adjusting communication style to bridge differences. If the misunderstanding stems from different communication preferences, some people prioritize details while others focus on the big picture. Some prefer direct communication while others value diplomacy. Effective communicators adapt their approach to match the needs of their audience rather than stubbornly maintaining their preferred style. Phase 3. Reflection. The reflection phase transforms temporary fixes into lasting improvements by examining the root causes of misunderstandings. While recognition and response address immediate issues, reflection creates systematic change by identifying patterns and developing preventative strategies. Personal reflection involves honestly examining your contribution to the miscommunication. Questions like, "What assumptions did I make? How clear was my explanation? And did I create space for questions?" help identify specific improvement areas. This self-analysis works best when approached with curiosity rather than self-criticism. The goal is growth, not guilt. Mutual reflection extends this process to include all parties in the conversation. Creating a structured debrief after important communication allows teams to collectively analyze what worked, what didn't, and why. Questions such as "what could we communicate more clearly next time?" and "where did we start to lose alignment?" help develop shared understanding and improve processes. The reflection phase culminates in implementing concrete changes based on insights gained. These might include developing new communication protocols, creating glossaries for frequently misunderstood terms, establishing regular check-in points during complex discussions, or investing in training for specific communication skills identified as weaknesses. Integration of the framework. The power of the MRF lies in its cyclical nature. Rather than a one-time fix, the framework creates an ongoing improvement system. As communicators move through recognition, response, and reflection repeatedly, they develop increasingly sophisticated communication skills and deeper mutual understanding. The framework's flexibility allows it to address various types of misunderstandings, from simple verbal confusion to complex cultural miscommunications. By adjusting the specific techniques within each phase to match the situation, communicators can apply the same basic structure across diverse contexts. Organizations implementing the MRF systematically often create supporting structures, such as communication guidelines incorporating the 3 phases, training programs teaching specific techniques each phase, and meeting protocols that build in time for recognition checks and reflection periods. These institutional supports help establish new communication norms. By mastering the art of transforming misunderstandings into learning opportunities, implementing active listening techniques, and developing effective feedback mechanisms, we create a powerful communication ecosystem that continuously improves. Rather than fearing miscommunication, we can welcome each challenge as an opportunity to refine our skills and deepen our connections with others. The feedback loop, from information to implementation. Effective feedback mechanisms rely on creating continuous loops rather than isolated instances of communication. Think of feedback not as a straight line from sender to receiver, but as a circle that keeps information flowing in multiple directions. This circular structure ensures that communication constantly improves rather than stagnates. The most valuable feedback loops include both content and process feedback. Content feedback addresses the substance of what was communicated, correcting factual errors, clarifying ambiguous statements, or adding missing information. Process feedback, meanwhile, examines how the communication occurred, commenting on tone, timing, medium choice, or organization. Both dimensions are necessary for comprehensive improvement. Consider the difference between a river and a stagnant pond. The river constantly refreshes itself through movement, while the pond grows increasingly murky without circulation. Our communication systems work similarly. Without regular feedback flowing through them, they become stale and ineffective. Establishing regular feedback checkpoints keeps communication fresh and responsive to changing needs. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset offers valuable insights for feedback systems. Those approaching feedback with a fixed mindset see criticism as personal judgment and tend to become defensive. Those with a growth mindset view feedback as valuable data for improvement. Organizations can foster this growth orientation by celebrating improved communication and framing feedback as a tool for development rather than a mechanism for evaluation. The clear method. Transforming communication breakdowns into breakthroughs. Misunderstandings offer more than just moments of frustration. They present invaluable opportunities to strengthen our communication skills. Throughout this chapter, we've explored how shifting our perspective on these communication gaps can transform them from obstacles into stepping stones toward mastery. By embracing active listening techniques and implementing effective feedback mechanisms, we develop the tools necessary to navigate even the most challenging conversations with confidence and clarity. The journey from misunderstanding to mastery isn't about eliminating errors entirely. It's about developing the resilience and skill to address them productively when they arise. Each misunderstood message becomes a chance to refine our approach, creating stronger connections and more meaningful exchanges with those around us. Let's put these principles into practice with a systematic approach you can implement immediately. The misinterpret method, converting confusion to clarity in 7 days. Day 1. Monitor your communication patterns, 20 minutes. Choose a notebook or digital document to track instances where you notice communication breakdowns. Record what was said, how it was interpreted, and what might have caused the disconnect. Look for patterns in these situations. Do they occur with certain people, topics, or in specific environments? Day 2. Initiate focused listening sessions, 15 to 30 minutes each. Schedule 2 conversations today where your only goal is to listen fully. Remove all distractions, maintain eye contact, and offer verbal affirmations like, "I understand," or "Tell me more." After each person speaks, paraphrase their main points with, "What I'm hearing is," to verify your understanding. Day 3. Seek feedback proactively, 5 to 10 minutes per interaction. Following important conversations, ask questions like, "How did my message come across to you?" Or, "Was there anything I said that seemed unclear?" This creates space for immediate clarification and demonstrates your commitment to being understood. Day 4. Investigate misunderstandings with curiosity. As needed, 10 to 15 minutes. When miscommunications occur, approach them with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness. Try saying, "I think we might have misunderstood each other. Can we take a moment to clarify?" Frame the conversation as a mutual exploration rather than assigning blame. Day 5. Note patterns and create solutions, 30 minutes. Review your communication journal from day 1 and identify recurring themes. For each pattern you discover, develop a specific strategy to address it. If you notice you're frequently misunderstood in written communication, for example, you might implement a practice of reading messages aloud before sending them. Day 6. Test new approaches throughout the day. Implement the strategies you developed yesterday in your interactions today. Pay special attention to how people respond to your adjusted communication style. What's working? What needs further refinement? Day 7. Express appreciation and evaluate progress, 15 minutes. Take time to thank those who've participated in your communication improvement journey. Send a quick note or verbally acknowledge their patience and feedback. Then review your week. What specific improvements have you noticed? Which techniques yielded the best results? What will you continue practicing? The beauty of this method lies in its simplicity and adaptability. You're not merely avoiding miscommunications, you're building a toolkit that transforms them into opportunities for deeper connection and understanding. By implementing these practices consistently, you'll develop a natural facility for navigating complex communications with grace and effectiveness. Remember that mastery is an ongoing process. As you continue applying these techniques, you'll not only reduce the frequency of misunderstandings, but also respond to them more productively when they do occur. This shift in approach strengthens your relationships, enhances your emotional intelligence, and enables you to handle difficult conversations with increasing ease. The skills we've explored in this chapter aren't just nice to have, they're essential components of successful communication in every area of life. By recognizing understandings as opportunities, engaging through active listening, and maintaining effective feedback mechanisms, you're building a foundation for clearer, more meaningful connections with everyone you encounter. The echo between words. Before we step into the next chapter, take a moment to pause, not to absorb more information, but to listen inwardly. You've just explored how misunderstandings, rather than failures, can become profound teachers in your communication journey. That shift in perspective, seeing conflict as feedback rather than rejection, marks a quiet but powerful turning point. It's the point where learning stops being theoretical and starts becoming transformational. Think of your recent conversations, a disagreement at work, a moment of tension with a friend, or a silence that felt heavier than words. Beneath these exchanges lies something vital, the desire to be understood. Every person you interact with carries that same longing. The practice of communication, then, is not simply about choosing the right words, but about cultivating the courage to understand and to be understood. You've already begun that work by reaching this point in the audiobook. True communicators are gardeners of connection. They tend to emotional soil that others overlook. They learn that empathy doesn't weaken authority, and that clarity isn't born from speaking more, but from listening better. Every time you pause before replying, Every time you reflect instead of react, you're strengthening a skill that ripples through every relationship you touch. The ability to listen without defense, to speak with purpose, and to repair when missteps occur. These are the traits that build trust, collaboration, and intimacy. If this audiobook has helped you see your communication patterns more clearly or given you tools to bridge understanding where there was once frustration, I have a gentle request. Please consider leaving an honest review. Your reflection can help another person, perhaps a leader, a parent, or a partner, find the clarity they've been searching for. Just as someone's words once guided you here, yours can become the echo that helps another learn to listen, to lead, and to connect. P.S. Every conversation you heal, every misunderstanding you transform, becomes part of a greater harmony. Thank you for being the kind of communicator who chooses connection over noise.
I hope you are enjoying my audiobook so far. It would be a pleasure if you could let me know how you are feeling about this audiobook in the comment section below. We would greatly appreciate it if you could also like this video and subscribe to United Audiobooks to have access to more best-selling audiobooks in the future. Also, if you are interested in getting more free audiobooks, please click the first link in the description below. Now, let us carry on with the next chapter.
Chapter 3. Mastering Emotional Reactivity in High-Stakes Conversations. The breaking point, when words become weapons. In the heat of a tense conversation, your heart races, your breathing shallows, and an impulse to lash out grips you. We've all been there. That moment when emotions threaten to hijack our better judgment. It's no coincidence that our most regrettable communication moments often occur during these emotional flare-ups. The ability to maintain composure while under pressure isn't merely a useful skill. It's essential for anyone seeking meaningful connections in both professional and personal spheres. Emotional reactivity represents perhaps the most significant barrier to effective communication. When triggered, our capacity for nuanced thinking diminishes, replaced by primitive fight or flight responses that evolved for physical survival, not complex social interactions. In high-stakes conversations, this reactivity can transform minor disagreements into relationship-damaging conflicts, derailing otherwise productive exchanges and leaving lasting wounds. Learning to manage these emotional surges is not optional for those seeking mastery in communication. It's the foundation upon which all other skills depend. What separates effective communicators from ineffective ones isn't the absence of emotional responses, but rather their relationship to those responses. The most skilled among us experience the same initial emotional triggers as everyone else. The difference lies in what happens next. While untrained communicators allow their emotions to dictate their responses, practiced communicators recognize the emotional surge as information and create space between feeling and action. This crucial pause, sometimes lasting just seconds, can mean the difference between communication breakdown and breakthrough. The good news is that emotional regulation can be systematically developed through specific techniques and consistent practice. This chapter explores powerful strategies you can implement immediately to manage reactivity in challenging conversations. We'll examine how simple physiological interventions like controlled breathing can interrupt the stress cascade, creating space for your higher reasoning to regain control. You'll discover how to transform potentially volatile moments into opportunities for deeper understanding and relationship strengthening. Beyond individual techniques, we'll explore how emotional regulation contributes to a broader communication ecosystem. When you consistently manage your reactions skillfully, you create psychological safety for others. This safety encourages honest dialogue, reduces defensive posturing, and fosters an environment where creative problem-solving can flourish. Far from suppressing emotions, effective regulation allows for their authentic expression in ways that build bridges rather than barriers. The stakes couldn't be higher. In our increasingly complex and interconnected world, the ability to navigate emotionally charged conversations determines not just professional success, but personal fulfillment. Whether negotiating high-value business deals, addressing sensitive issues with team members, navigating family conflicts, or having crucial conversations with loved ones. Your capacity to remain emotionally regulated directly impacts outcomes. By mastering the skills in this chapter, you'll develop confidence to enter difficult conversations that others avoid, knowing you possess the tools to maintain clarity and connection even when tensions rise. Throughout this chapter, we'll explore 3 key dimensions of emotional regulation: identifying personal triggers before they hijack your responses, implementing in-the-moment techniques to maintain composure during challenging exchanges, and expressing emotions constructively to deepen understanding rather than widen divides. These practical strategies will empower you to transform potential conflicts into opportunities for growth and connection, enhancing both your professional effectiveness and personal relationships. When the storm inside threatens to drown you. Jack Miller sat at his desk, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like trapped insects. The email from the board of directors glowed on his screen, its words cutting into him like knives. They questioned his leadership, his decision to restructure the Eastern Division, and his worth. His jaw clenched. Heat rose from his collar to his temples. The urge to slam his fist into the keyboard nearly overwhelmed him. He closed his eyes, counted to 5 while drawing air deep into his lungs. He remembered Dr. Levine's words from last month's executive coaching session. The first reaction belongs to your lizard brain. The second belongs to you. Jack exhaled slowly through his nose, feeling the tension begin to loosen its grip on his shoulders. Outside his office window, rain fell on the parking lot. Each drop caught the morning light, transformed for a moment into something beautiful before disappearing. Jack watched the water collect in puddles, forming miniature lakes across the asphalt. The rain's steady rhythm helped regulate his heartbeat, bringing him back to the present moment. "I need 5 minutes," he told Sarah, his assistant, through the intercom. He stood, stretched his arms overhead until he felt the pull across his chest. Last year, he would have fired off a response immediately, defending his position with cutting remarks and thinly veiled threats. Last year, 3 department heads had quit within a month of each other. His daughter had stopped asking him to attend her soccer games. The memory of Emma's face, disappointed but not surprised, struck him harder than the email. She expected him to choose work over her, expected his anger. Jack rolled his neck, felt the vertebrae crack. He thought of the techniques his therapist taught him. Name the emotion, acknowledge it, question its source. He recognized the familiar rush of shame that came with failure, with being found wanting. The board's criticism stung because a part of him believed it. Jack moved to the window and pressed his palm against the cool glass. Below, a young woman rushed across the parking lot, newspaper held over her head, laughing as the wind blew rain against her legs. Her joy in the face of discomfort struck him as profound. The problem wasn't the rain, it was how you responded to getting wet. He returned to his desk and began typing a measured response. He acknowledged the board's concerns without defensiveness. He outlined his strategy with clarity rather than frustration. When finished, he read it twice before sending, making sure his reaction came from his higher brain, not his wounded ego. The process took 20 minutes instead of 2, but he knew the difference this would make. The rain against his window increased, drumming against the glass like applause. Jack felt something shift inside him. Not the problem solved. There would be more emails, more criticism, more triggers for his anger, but a recognition of his power to choose his response. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Still coming to my game tonight?" His fingers hovered over the screen. The quarterly reports waited. 3 client calls needed to be returned. A presentation demanded revisions. "Wouldn't miss it," he typed, feeling the truth of it settle in his chest. The reports would wait. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk. Emma at 8, missing her front teeth, arms wrapped around his neck. He had been present then, before work consumed him, before he began measuring his worth by his productivity. He ran his thumb along the frame's edge, wondering how many moments of connection had he sacrificed on the altar of his reactivity, and how many more could he reclaim if he learned to weather his emotional storms with the same thoughtful patience he now applied to this email. The heat of the moment. When stress creeps in, our emotions can flare up like a match struck in the dark. Emotional reactivity, that knee-jerk response to challenging situations, often hijacks our rational thought processes before we even realize what's happening. This automatic response is rooted in our biology, specifically in the amygdala, which activates our fight or flight responses during perceived threats. When we feel attacked or threatened in a conversation, our heart rate increases, our muscles tense, and our ability to think clearly diminishes. Think of your emotional regulation system as a car's braking system. In normal conditions, the brakes work perfectly, allowing you to slow down or stop when needed. But in high-pressure situations like navigating a steep, icy hill, the same brakes might not respond as effectively. You need special techniques to maintain control. Similarly, the strategies that help you manage emotions in everyday situations may not suffice during high-stakes conversations. Research from the field of neuroscience reveals that when we're emotionally triggered, blood flow actually decreases to our prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for rational thinking, problem solving, and impulse control. This physiological change explains why we sometimes say or do things we later regret during heated discussions. The good news is that with practice and awareness, we can interrupt this automatic process. By recognizing our personal triggers and the physical sensations that accompany emotional arousal, we can catch ourselves before reacting impulsively. Becoming aware of your emotional triggers is the crucial first step toward managing reactivity. Common triggers in professional settings include feeling disrespected, having your competence questioned, being interrupted repeatedly, receiving criticism, especially in public, or perceiving unfairness. Personal triggers often stem from past experiences and can vary widely between individuals. Take time to reflect on past conflicts that escalated quickly. What specific words, tones, or behaviors set you off? Understanding your unique trigger points creates the space needed for a more measured response. Learning to recognize the physical signs of emotional arousal gives you a crucial advantage in managing reactivity. Does your face flush? Do your hands shake? Does your breathing become shallow? These bodily signals serve as early warning systems, alerting you that your emotions are intensifying before they completely overwhelm your thinking. By tuning into these physical cues, you create a window of opportunity to deploy regulation strategies before saying or doing something counterproductive. Stressful conversations create a physiological cascade in our bodies. When we perceive a threat, even a social one like being contradicted in a meeting, our bodies release cortisol and adrenaline. These stress hormones prepare us for action, but can impair our ability to listen effectively or respond thoughtfully. The intensity of this response often doesn't match the actual threat level in professional settings. The brain doesn't always distinguish between physical dangers and social challenges, which explains why a seemingly minor disagreement can trigger a major emotional reaction. Picture a thermostat in your home that regulates temperature. When the room gets too hot, the thermostat signals the air conditioning to kick in and cool things down. Similarly, emotional regulation strategies act as your personal thermostat, sensing when your emotional temperature is rising and activating cooling mechanisms before you overheat. These mechanisms might include deep breathing, mental reframing, or briefly stepping away from the situation. Effective emotional regulation doesn't mean suppressing or denying feelings. In fact, attempting to completely suppress emotions often backfires, intensifying the feelings and making them harder to manage in the long run. Instead, the goal is to acknowledge your emotions, while creating space between feeling and action. This space allows you to choose a response aligned with your values and goals rather than being driven solely by emotional impulses. Studies have shown that people who successfully manage emotional reactivity tend to have stronger relationships, more career success, and better overall well-being. This isn't surprising when you consider how much damage can be done in a single moment of unchecked reactivity. Careers have been derailed, relationships severed, and opportunities lost because of emotional outbursts that could have been managed with the right strategies. Managing emotional reactivity isn't about never feeling strong emotions. It's about developing the skills to navigate those emotions effectively without allowing them to dictate your actions. The breath bridge. Emotional regulation techniques provide practical tools for maintaining composure when emotions threaten to overwhelm us. These strategies create a buffer between stimulus and response, allowing us to act intentionally rather than reactively. The most accessible and immediate regulation technique is controlled breathing. When we're stressed or upset, our breathing typically becomes shallow and rapid. By deliberately slowing and deepening our breath, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, our body's natural calming mechanism. Try this simple technique during your next challenging conversation. Breathe in slow through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 2, then exhale through your mouth for a count of 6. This extended exhale is particularly effective at reducing stress hormones and signaling safety to your nervous system. Just 3 cycles of this breathing pattern can create enough space to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. The beauty of breathing techniques lies in their subtlety. You can use them anytime, anywhere, without others necessarily noticing. Our breath serves as a bridge between body and mind. Like a sturdy bridge spanning troubled waters, conscious breathing provides safe passage over the turbulent river of emotions. When strong feelings threaten to sweep you away, your breath becomes the steady path that keeps you grounded and connected to your rational mind. Each deliberate breath reinforces this bridge, making it stronger for future crossings. Physical posture also plays a surprisingly significant role in emotional regulation. Research shows that our bodily position influences how we feel and how effectively we can manage emotions. When you notice tension rising, try adjusting your posture. Uncross your arms, relax your shoulders away from your ears, and sit or stand with your spine comfortably aligned. This open posture sends signals to your brain that you're safe, making it easier to remain calm. Additionally, placing both feet firmly on the ground provides a literal and figurative sense of grounding when emotions feel turbulent. The practice of pausing, creating a deliberate moment of reflection before responding, ranks among the most powerful emotional regulation techniques. This doesn't require a lengthy silence. Even a 3-second pause can make a dramatic difference in the quality of your response. During this brief interval, ask yourself, what outcome do I want from this interaction? This question shifts focus from the immediate emotional trigger to your longer-term goals, helping you respond strategically rather than reactively. The pause also gives you time to choose words that will move the conversation forward constructively. William Ury, co-author of the negotiation classic Getting to Yes, recommends what he calls going to the balcony during difficult conversations. This mental technique involves imagining yourself stepping back from the immediate interaction and observing it from a distance, as if from a theater balcony. From this vantage point, you can see the broader dynamics at play, rather than getting caught up in the heat of the moment. When emotions run high, mentally going to the balcony provides perspective and reminds you that this single interaction is just one scene in a much longer play. Preparation plays a crucial role in emotional regulation. Before entering situations you anticipate might be challenging, take time to mentally rehearse how you'll respond to potential triggers. This preparation activates the prefrontal cortex, the brain's planning center, making it more likely to remain engaged when emotions arise. Consider writing down specific phrases you can use when you feel yourself becoming reactive. I need to think about this more before responding, or I understand this is important. Let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Having these phrases ready reduces the cognitive load during tense moments. The environment itself can either support or undermine your emotional regulation efforts. When possible, choose settings conducive to productive conversation, quiet spaces with minimal distractions, comfortable seating, and neutral territory. If you find yourself becoming emotionally triggered in a challenging environment, use your senses as anchors. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This grounding technique, known as the 5-4-3-2-1 method, redirects attention from emotional reactivity to present moment awareness. Emotional contagion, the tendency to catch and mirror others' emotional states, can significantly impact your ability to maintain composure. Research shows that emotions spread between people much like viruses, often below the level of conscious awareness. This means that someone else's agitation can trigger your own if you're not careful. When interacting with someone who's visibly upset, consciously maintain your own emotional equilibrium through breathing and self-talk. I notice they're upset, but I can stay calm and present. This boundary setting prevents emotional hijacking while still allowing you to respond with empathy. The ability to reframe situations, to consciously shift how you interpret events, serves as a powerful regulation technique during high-stakes conversations. When you feel triggered, pause and consider alternative explanations for the behavior that upset you. For example, if someone interrupts you in a meeting, rather than automatically assuming disrespect, consider whether they might be enthusiastic about the topic, operating under time pressure, or unaware of their interrupting habit. This cognitive flexibility doesn't mean excusing genuinely problematic behavior, but it does prevent you from reacting to assumptions that may not be accurate. How might your professional relationships transform if you consistently responded to challenging situations from a place of regulated calm rather than reactive emotion? The ERC framework, Emotional Regulation and Communication. The Emotional Regulation and Communication, ERC, the framework offers a systematic approach to navigating emotionally charged conversations with greater composure and effectiveness. This framework breaks down the complex process of emotional management into 3 distinct yet interconnected phases: preparation, regulation, and expression. By understanding and implementing each component, you can transform potentially destructive interactions into opportunities for deeper connection and problem solving. Preparation phase, setting the foundation. The preparation phase acknowledges that emotional regulation begins before the difficult conversation starts. During this phase, you identify potential emotional triggers and develop strategies to address them proactively. Start by reflecting on previous challenging conversations. What specific topics, phrases, or interaction styles tend to activate your emotional responses? Perhaps it's feeling dismissed, interrupted, or criticized in a particular way. Once you've identified likely triggers, create a personalized toolkit of coping strategies. These might include visualization techniques, where you mentally rehearse maintaining composure during challenging moments. For instance, imagine yourself responding calmly to criticism rather than becoming defensive. Pair this visualization with specific breathing exercises you can use in the moment. Research shows that this type of mental rehearsal activates neural pathways similar to actual practice, making it more likely you'll access these skills when needed. The preparation phase also involves setting clear intentions for the conversation. Rather than focusing solely on the content you want to convey, explicitly consider the emotional tone you want to maintain. Ask yourself, How do I want to feel during and after this conversation? How do I want the other person to feel? These questions shift your focus from winning an argument to fostering understanding, significantly altering how you approach the interaction. Another crucial element of preparation is developing awareness of your physical state. Fatigue, hunger, and prior stressors can deplete your emotional regulation capacity. Before entering important conversations, attend to basic needs. Ensure you're well rested, properly nourished, and not rushing from another stressful situation. This physiological preparation creates the optimal conditions for emotional regulation when challenges arise. Regulation phase, managing real-time responses. The regulation phase focuses on real-time emotional management during the conversation itself. The centerpiece of this phase is the pause and reflect method, a deliberate interruption in the automatic stimulus response pattern that characterizes emotional reactivity. When you notice emotional intensity building, pause. This might be a literal pause in speaking, or it might involve a brief phrase like, "I'd like to think about that for a moment." During this pause, implement specific regulation techniques. The most accessible is controlled breathing, inhaling slowly through the nose, holding briefly, and exhaling completely through the mouth. This physiological intervention activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which counteracts the stress response. Simultaneously, use self-talk to gain perspective. This is challenging but manageable, or I can respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. The regulation phase also involves continuous body monitoring. Notice physical signs of increasing emotion, tension in your shoulders, changes in your voice or fidgeting, and use these as early warning signals to implement regulation strategies. Research shows that this body awareness, sometimes called interoception, significantly enhances emotional regulation capacity, allowing intervention before emotions escalate beyond control. Another powerful regulation technique is cognitive reframing, consciously shifting your interpretation of the situation. When triggered, ask yourself, what else might be happening here? What might I be missing? For example, if someone seems dismissive, rather than assuming disrespect, consider whether they might be preoccupied with their own concerns or unaware of their impact. This perspective taking reduces emotional reactivity without dismissing your legitimate concerns. Expression phase, communicating authentically. The expression phase focuses on how to communicate emotions constructively once they're regulated. This doesn't mean suppressing authentic feelings, but rather expressing them in ways that advance understanding rather than escalation. The foundation of skillful emotional expression is using I statements that own your experience without attributing blame. For example, I felt concerned when the deadline changed without discussion rather than, "You always make arbitrary decisions." Specificity greatly enhances the effectiveness of emotional expression. Vague statements like, "I'm upset," provide little useful information. Instead, identify the specific emotion with precision. Are you disappointed, frustrated, worried, or something else? Then connect this feeling to concrete behaviors or situations, not character judgments. For example, "I felt frustrated when my suggestions weren't acknowledged," is more productive than, "I'm upset because you're not a good listener." The expression phase also includes strategic requests that move the conversation toward resolution. After expressing an emotion clearly, articulate what you need moving forward. "I'd appreciate being consulted after decisions affecting my work are finalized," or "I need a few minutes to gather my thoughts before responding to new information." These requests transform emotional expression from mere venting to constructive problem solving. Timing plays a crucial role in the expression phase. Sometimes the wisest choice is to briefly defer emotional expression until you can communicate more effectively. This isn't avoidance, but strategic patience. You might say, "This is important to me, and I want to discuss it when I can be clearer? Can we revisit this tomorrow? This approach acknowledges the importance of the issue while creating space for more productive dialogue. Integration of framework components. The power of the ERC framework lies not just in its individual components, but in their integration. Each phase influences and reinforces the others. Thorough preparation enhances real-time regulation ability. Effective regulation creates the conditions for clear expression, and skillful expression reduces future triggers, making preparation for subsequent interactions more effective. This framework operates as a continuous learning loop. After each challenging conversation, reflect on what worked and what didn't. Which preparation strategies proved most helpful? Which regulation techniques were accessible at the moment? How did your expression choices impact the conversation's outcome? This reflection becomes part of your preparation for future interactions, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of improvement. The ERC framework accommodates individual differences in emotional processing. Some people need more time in the regulation phase before they can effectively express themselves. Others may require more extensive preparation for particularly challenging relationships or topics. The framework is flexible enough to adapt to these variations while providing a consistent structure for navigating emotional complexity. Perhaps most importantly, this framework transforms emotional management from a mysterious talent that some people naturally possess to a learnable skill set that anyone can develop with practice. Breaking the process into discrete, manageable components makes emotional intelligence in high-stakes conversations accessible to everyone, regardless of natural temperament or previous experience. By mastering emotional reactivity through preparation strategies, applying regulation techniques in the moment, and expressing emotions thoughtfully, you create the conditions for genuine connection and problem solving, even in the most challenging conversations, transforming potential conflicts into opportunities for deeper understanding and positive change. Managing emotional reactivity isn't just about avoiding conflict, it's about transforming potential flashpoints into opportunities for growth and deeper connection. Throughout this chapter, we've explored how developing emotional regulation techniques can radically change your approach to high-stakes conversations, benefiting both your professional relationships and personal well-being. By implementing strategies to manage emotional responses in stressful situations, you're not merely putting out fires, you're preventing them from igniting in the first place. The practice of emotional regulation through techniques like deep breathing doesn't just preserve professional decorum, it creates space for thoughtful engagement that leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. And when you apply these skills consistently, you'll find that expressing emotions thoughtfully becomes second nature, enhancing your decision-making and fundamentally improving your relationship dynamics. The Breathe Method, your 7-step path to emotional mastery. The journey to managing emotional reactivity doesn't happen overnight, but with this structured approach, you can transform how you handle even the most challenging conversations. 1. Be aware of your triggers, 5 to 10 minutes. Take time before potentially difficult conversations to identify what specific topics, phrases, or behaviors typically spark strong emotional responses from you. Jot these down in a notebook you keep handy. Awareness is your first line of defense. 2. Regulate with deep breathing, 2 to 3 minutes. Before entering a high-stakes situation, practice the 4-4-6 breathing technique. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. This simple practice activates your parasympathetic nervous system, helping you enter conversations from a centered, calm state. 3. Engage the pause button, 5 to 10 seconds. When you feel emotion rising during a conversation, implement a strategic pause. This might mean taking a sip of water, jotting a quick note, or simply saying, "That's interesting. Let me think about that for a moment." These few seconds can prevent hours of conflict repair later. 4. Articulate with I statements during conversation. Frame your responses using statements that own your experience rather than assigning blame. Instead of "you always interrupt me," try "I feel frustrated when I'm unable to finish expressing my thoughts." 5. Take time to reflect, 10 to 15 minutes post-conversation. After each challenging interaction, ask yourself, what went well? What triggered me? How effectively did I regulate my response? This reflection builds your emotional intelligence over time. 6. Honest feedback, 15 to 30 minutes weekly. Regularly check in with a trusted colleague or friend who can provide honest insights about your communication patterns. Ask specific questions like, did I come across as defensive when we discussed the project timeline? 7. Evolve your approach. Ongoing. Keep a simple journal of high-stakes conversations, noting patterns in your emotional responses and communication effectiveness. Review monthly to identify growth areas and celebrate improvements. The BREATHE method isn't just a crisis management tool. It's a framework for developing emotional intelligence that will serve you in every area of life. With practice, you'll find yourself responding rather than reacting, even in the most challenging situations. Remember that mastering emotional reactivity is a skill, not an innate talent. Like any skill, it improves with deliberate practice and patience with yourself through the learning process. You'll have days when you implement these strategies flawlessly, and others when you fall short of your own expectations. What matters is your commitment to growth. As you move forward, carry these strategies with you into every conversation that matters. Your ability to maintain composure under pressure, to listen deeply even when triggered, and to express yourself with thoughtful clarity will distinguish you as someone others trust and respect. More importantly, it will give you the freedom to engage fully in life's most challenging and rewarding conversations without fear of losing control. The path to emotional mastery isn't about suppressing your feelings, it's about channeling them constructively. By doing so, you transform potential landmines into stepping stones toward more authentic connections and more effective outcomes. And in today's high-pressure world, there are few skills more valuable than that. Chapter 4. The Lifelong Journey of Emotional and Empathetic Development. The turning point, when communication becomes transformation. In our interpersonal exchanges, we often mistake mere talking for true connection. The journey from basic conversation to meaningful communication represents one of life's most significant personal evolutions, yet many remain unaware they've barely begun this path. The mastery of emotional intelligence and empathetic communication isn't a destination you arrive at, but rather a continuous journey that requires dedication, self-reflection, and adaptability. As we near the conclusion of our exploration of effective communication, this chapter bridges everything we've learned about clear expression, active listening, and emotional awareness to reveal the lifelong nature of these vital skills. The misconception that emotional intelligence is an inherent trait rather than a cultivated skill has prevented countless individuals from realizing their full communicative potential. Research consistently shows that those who approach emotional and empathetic development as an ongoing process rather than a fixed attribute experience significantly more satisfying relationships and professional success. Your ability to connect with others isn't predetermined by personality or upbringing. It's shaped by your willingness to engage in continuous growth and adaptation to new social environments and insights. Throughout this audiobook, we've examined how miscommunication undermines relationships and creates unnecessary conflict. We've explored techniques for clarity, strategies for active listening, and methods for navigating difficult conversations. These tools provide the foundation, but their true power emerges when integrated into a deliberate, lifelong practice. The quality of your communication determines the quality of your life, not just in fleeting moments, but in the cumulative impact of thousands of interactions that shape your personal and professional identity. By this point, you understand that effective communication isn't simply about articulating your thoughts clearly. It's equally about receiving others' messages with genuine openness and responding with appropriate emotional intelligence. This chapter extends that understanding by examining how these skills evolve throughout your life in response to new challenges, relationships, and self-discoveries. The most accomplished communicators recognize that their development never truly ends. They remain students of human connection, regardless of their expertise. In the sections that follow, we'll explore three critical dimensions of your ongoing communicative development. First, we'll examine concrete approaches to continuous self-improvement that strengthen emotional intelligence and empathetic communication. Next, we'll dive into mastering nonverbal communication and conflict resolution through consistent practice and heightened self-awareness. Finally, we'll discuss how adapting to new environments and insights creates more cohesive and supportive relationship networks across all aspects of your life. This chapter serves as both a culmination and a new beginning. While we've built a comprehensive toolkit for effective communication throughout this audiobook, the journey ahead involves applying these tools with increasing sophistication as you encounter new communicative challenges. The true measure of communicative mastery isn't perfection, but progression. The willingness to acknowledge missteps, incorporate feedback, and continuously refine your approach. By embracing this mindset, you transform communication from a basic life skill into a powerful catalyst for personal and professional transformation. What distinguishes ordinary communicators from exceptional ones isn't natural talent, but dedicated practice. The individuals who most powerfully connect with others have typically invested thousands of hours in self-reflection, feedback seeking, and deliberate improvement. They've learned to recognize emotional patterns, adapt to diverse communication styles, and remain curious about the inner worlds of those around them. This chapter offers a roadmap for joining their ranks, not through overnight transformation, but through committed engagement with the lifelong journey of communicative excellence. The path forward requires courage, patience, and humility. You'll encounter moments of breakthrough and setbacks, periods of rapid growth and frustrating plateaus. Yet, with each communication challenge you navigate, each difficult conversation you handle with grace, each misunderstanding you patiently resolve, you build not just skill, but wisdom. Let's begin exploring how this journey unfolds and how you can embrace it fully, transforming not just how you communicate, but ultimately who you become through the practice of authentic connection with others. The Inner Landscape, a journey through connection. The sun cast long shadows across David's office as he stared at the email on his screen. 3 weeks after the department merger, the tension had grown unbearable. He read the complaint again, a formal grievance from 2 team members about his cold management style and lack of sensitivity to the transitional challenges. The word stung. He had always prided himself on efficiency, on getting results. People's feelings seemed secondary to the bottom line, until now. David pushed back from his desk and moved to the window. Outside, the city sprawled before him, buildings reflecting golden light, people moving like purposeful ants below. A construction crane swung in slow motion on the horizon. He pressed his palm against the cool glass. The city continued its rhythm, indifferent to his internal struggle. "I don't understand why they can't just do their jobs," he muttered. But even as the words left his mouth, memories surfaced. Sarah's face when he dismissed her concerns about the workload. Marcus flinching when David cut him off mid-sentence during the last team meeting. The silence that fell over the room when he entered. Something inside him shifted. A recognition that perhaps the problem wasn't them. Perhaps it never had been. The office phone rang, pulling him back. His assistant informed him that the executive coaching session he'd reluctantly agreed to was scheduled for tomorrow morning. David thanked her and hung up, his eyes falling on the family photo on his desk. his wife and daughter smiling back at him from their vacation last summer. His daughter had stopped sharing her school stories with him months ago. His wife's good morning kisses had become perfunctory. The pattern extended beyond his office walls. The realization hit him with physical force. He remembered his father, a man of few words and fewer displays of emotion. Business is business, he used to say. Feelings have no place in it. David had absorbed this lesson, carried it through business school, into his marriage, his parenting, his leadership style. He had achieved everything he thought success meant: the title, the salary, the respect. Yet, here he sat, surrounded by people who feared rather than respected him, who worked for him but didn't connect with him. The setting sun painted the room orange. David picked up a notepad and began to write. Not bullet points or action items as usual, but questions. What would happen if I listened more than I spoke? If I asked about their concerns instead of dismissing them? If I showed that I understood, even when I disagreed? The questions flowed, and with each one, a weight seemed to lift. This wasn't about becoming soft or ineffective. This was about becoming whole. David heard the cleaning crew in the hallway and realized how late it had grown. He gathered his things, tucking the notepad into his briefcase with unusual care. Tomorrow would begin the coaching session, but tonight he would try something different. He would ask his daughter about her day, and he would listen, really listen, to her answer. He would ask his wife what she needed, not what she had accomplished. Small steps on what he now recognized would be a long path. As he walked to the elevator, David wondered about the cost of emotional intelligence, not in dollars, but in vulnerability. Could a man trained to see weakness as failure learn to see emotion as strength? Could he rebuild connections frayed by years of distance? The elevator doors closed on these questions, carrying him down toward an uncertain but newly hopeful evening. How different might his world become if he allowed himself to feel the full range of human emotion, not just in private moments, but in the connections that defined his life. The journey of emotional growth. Emotional intelligence doesn't suddenly appear fully formed. It grows gradually, like a garden that requires consistent care and attention. Each day presents new opportunities to notice our feelings, understand their origins, and manage them effectively. When we commit to this ongoing process, we develop the emotional awareness that forms the foundation of meaningful connections with others. Think of emotional intelligence as a muscle that strengthens with use. Just as a weightlifter doesn't become stronger after a single gym session, we don't become emotionally intelligent after handling one difficult conversation well. It requires regular practice, noticing when we feel irritated during meetings, recognizing anxiety before important presentations, and identifying joy when connecting with colleagues. Each emotional observation builds our self-awareness, creating a robust emotional vocabulary that helps us navigate complex social situations. Self-improvement in emotional intelligence demands honesty with ourselves. Research by psychologist Daniel Goleman shows that individuals with high emotional intelligence regularly assess their emotional patterns and triggers without judgment. This self-reflection isn't always comfortable, but it's essential. When we notice ourselves reacting strongly to criticism, for instance, we can pause to explore why that particular feedback touched a nerve. These moments of discomfort often contain the most valuable lessons for growth. Our capacity for empathy expands as we develop emotional intelligence. By understanding our own emotional landscape, we become better equipped to understand others. This isn't about perfectly reading minds. It's about creating space to consider different perspectives. When a team member seems frustrated, instead of immediately becoming defensive, emotionally intelligent people consider, what might they be experiencing? What pressures might they face that I don't see? This perspective taking creates bridges of understanding where walls of judgment once stood. Empathetic communication skills develop through deliberate practice. Consider keeping an empathy journal where you record interactions that went well and those that could have gone better. Note what you noticed about others' emotional states, how you responded, and what you might do differently next time. This reflective practice accelerates growth and prevents repeating the same interpersonal mistakes. Over time, you'll notice patterns both in yourself and others that were previously invisible. The brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to form new connections throughout life, means we can always improve our emotional intelligence. Scientists have discovered that meditation and mindfulness practices actually change brain structures associated with empathy and self-awareness. Even brief daily practices of simply noticing emotions without judging them can strengthen the neural pathways that support emotional intelligence. This biological reality confirms what experience teaches. Consistent small efforts yield significant changes over time. Feedback from trusted sources provides essential data for our emotional growth. While self-reflection is valuable, we all have blind spots. A colleague, friend, or coach who can kindly point out when our words and actions don't align gives us invaluable information. The willingness to hear this feedback, especially when it contradicts our self-perception, distinguishes those who continue growing emotionally from those who plateau. The path to emotional intelligence isn't linear. Some days, despite our best intentions, we fall short. We might snap at someone who doesn't deserve it or miss obvious emotional cues. Rather than seeing these moments as failures, they represent important learning opportunities. By asking, "What triggered that response?" or "What did I miss in that interaction?" we transform missteps into stepping stones for growth. The most powerful tool we have for improving emotional intelligence is not a technique, but an attitude, a genuine curiosity about ourselves and others, notes psychologist Susan David in her work on emotional agility. This curiosity, a willingness to explore rather than judge, creates the psychological safety necessary for honest self-examination and genuine empathy. Continuous self-improvement in emotional intelligence isn't a luxury. It's the essential foundation for effective communication and meaningful relationships in every area of life. The language beyond words. Nonverbal communication often speaks louder than our words ever could. Research suggests that up to 93% of communication is nonverbal, combining body language, facial expressions, tone, and other signals that transmit meaning. These silent messages can reinforce our spoken words or completely contradict them. When someone's arms are tightly crossed while saying, "I'm open to your ideas," their body tells the true story. Learning to read these cues accurately helps us understand what's truly happening beneath the surface of conversations. Most of us unconsciously broadcast our emotional states through nonverbal signals. A subtle tightening around the eyes might indicate stress. A slight forward lean often signals interest. Fidgeting with objects typically suggests nervousness or impatience. Becoming fluent in this unspoken language requires deliberate attention. Start by observing others in meetings or social gatherings. Notice patterns without immediately judging them. Which nonverbal cues appear when someone is enthusiastic, defensive, confused? This observational practice builds your recognition skills. The mirror neurons in our brains allow us to experience similar sensations to those we observe in others. This neurological mechanism forms the biological basis of empathy. When we see someone smile, our facial muscles subtly prepare to smile too. When we notice someone in pain, our brains activate pain-related regions. This remarkable system helps explain why nonverbal communication can be so powerfully contagious. By understanding the science, we can become more intentional about both reading other signals and managing our own. Consider your own nonverbal communication as an instrument that requires regular tuning. Like a musician who practices scales daily, we need consistent awareness exercises to maintain our nonverbal fluency. A simple practice: Set a timer 3 times daily for a quick body scan. Notice your facial expression, shoulder tension, breathing pattern, and posture. This quick check-in builds awareness of what signals you're sending. Are they aligned with how you want to communicate? This regular self-assessment creates the foundation for more authentic nonverbal expression. Think of conflict resolution as a dance, where timing and rhythm matter as much as the steps themselves. Each participant must read subtle cues about when to advance, when to pause, and how to match their partner's energy. Those skilled in this dance recognize early warning signs of escalation, a hardening voice tone, quickened breathing, or closed body language. By noticing these signals before conflict intensifies, they can adjust their approach, perhaps slowing the pace, softening their tone, or creating space for reflection. Mastering nonverbal communication transforms how we navigate disagreements. When someone expresses anger, untrained communicators often mirror that intensity, creating an escalating cycle. Those with developed nonverbal awareness can choose a different response, maintaining open body language, speaking in measured tones, and creating a calm presence that often de-escalates tension naturally. This isn't about manipulating others, but about creating conditions where productive dialogue becomes possible. The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said, IBM founder Peter Drucker observed. This profound insight highlights how critical nonverbal fluency is to understanding the complete message. The pauses between words, the slight hesitations, the eye contact maintained or avoided. These elements often contain the emotional truth of the communication. By developing sensitivity to these subtleties, we gain access to deeper levels of understanding. Conflict resolution skills developed through practice in low-stakes situations. Consider implementing a communication laboratory with trusted colleagues or friends where you can role-play challenging conversations and receive feedback. Notice what happens in your body when tension arises. Does your voice tighten? Do you speak faster? Does your breathing become shallow? Awareness of these patterns allows you to recognize your own escalation signals before they intensify conflict. With practice, you'll develop the ability to pause and reset when needed. Self-awareness exercises build the internal compass needed for skilled communication. Try this practice. After important interactions, take 2 minutes to reflect. What emotions arose during the conversation? How did these feelings affect your nonverbal signals? What cues did you notice or miss from the other person? Were there moments when the spoken and unspoken messages aligned or conflicted? This reflective practice builds the observation muscle essential for communication mastery. Cultural differences dramatically influence how we interpret nonverbal cues. Direct eye contact, considered respectful in many Western contexts, can seem confrontational in other cultural traditions. Physical distance that feels appropriate varies widely across cultures. Even nodding can mean different things in different settings. This diversity reminds us to approach nonverbal interpretation with humility and curiosity. When uncertain about someone's nonverbal signals, especially across cultural differences, the most effective approach is simple. Respectfully check your understanding rather than assuming you've interpreted correctly. How might your relationships transform if you became as fluent in reading and expressing nonverbal cues as you are with spoken language? Adapting to growth and change. Relational networks thrive on adaptability. As we encounter new information about ourselves and others, we face a choice: cling to outdated perceptions or adjust our understanding. This willingness to update our mental models determines whether our relationships stagnate or flourish. When we recognize that a colleague we once found difficult actually operates from insecurities similar to our own, the relationship can transform. This adaptability, the capacity to integrate new insights about others, forms the cornerstone of evolving relationships. New environments demand fresh approaches to communication. Starting a job, joining a community group, or entering a different cultural context requires recalibrating our communication style. What worked perfectly in one setting might create confusion in another. Effective communicators observe the norms around them, noting how feedback is delivered, how disagreement is expressed, and what communication styles are valued. Then, they thoughtfully adjust their approach, not abandoning their authentic voice, but expressing it in ways that resonate in the new context. Think of your relational network as a living ecosystem rather than a fixed structure. In natural ecosystems, each element affects all others, creating complex interdependencies that constantly evolve. Similarly, each relationship in your network influences others, creating patterns that shift over time. When you improve communication with one person, the effects often ripple through connected relationships. This ecosystem perspective helps us understand why investing in communication skills yields benefits far beyond individual interactions. Research confirms that diverse relational networks provide significant advantages. People with connections across different industries, cultures, and viewpoints access broader information and spot opportunities others miss. Building this network diversity requires intentional effort to move beyond our comfort zones and natural affinity groups. It means cultivating relationships with people whose experiences and perspectives differ from our own. This diversity strengthens not just our network, but our capacity to understand and communicate across differences. Adaptation requires a balance between flexibility and boundaries. While openness to change supports growth, clear boundaries protect our well-being and values. Skilled communicators develop this balance through ongoing self-reflection. They regularly consider, where do I need to adjust my approach to connect more effectively? Where do I need to maintain boundaries to preserve my integrity and energy? This reflective practice ensures adaptability doesn't become accommodation at the expense of authenticity. The quality of our connections matter more than quantity. Research on social networks shows that a few deep, supportive relationships contribute more to well-being than many superficial connections. Investing time in nurturing key relationships through sincere attention, meaningful conversation, and reliable support yields greater returns than distributing minimal energy across many casual contacts. This focus on relationship depth creates the psychological safety necessary for honest communication and genuine growth. When we commit to adaptability in relationships, we give others permission to evolve too. Many relationships suffer when we hold people to past versions of themselves, refusing to update our perception as they grow and change. By explicitly acknowledging and appreciating others' development, we create space for authentic growth. This might sound as simple as saying, I've noticed how you've developed more patience in challenging situations, or I appreciate how you've become more direct in your communication style. These observations validate others' growth efforts and strengthen the connection. The journey of emotional and empathetic development is ultimately about integration, bringing together self-awareness, nonverbal fluency, relational adaptability to a cohesive approach to communication. As we commit to continuous self-improvement, we develop the emotional intelligence that forms the foundation for authentic connection. By mastering nonverbal cues and conflict resolution strategies, we learn to read the unspoken language that often carries the most important messages. And by adapting to new insights and environments, we build networks characterized by depth, resilience, and mutual growth. This lifelong development path doesn't just improve our communication, it transforms how we experience and contribute to every relationship in our lives. The journey we've explored throughout this chapter represents more than just a collection of skills. It embodies a fundamental shift in how we approach our relationships and communications. Developing emotional intelligence and empathetic communication doesn't happen overnight. It requires dedication to continuous growth and a willingness to adapt as we encounter new insights about ourselves and others. 3 key principles we've covered work together synergistically. Our commitment to self-improvement fuels our mastery of nonverbal communication and conflict resolution, which in turn strengthens our adaptability in diverse relational contexts. Each element builds upon the others, creating a robust foundation for meaningful connection. What makes these skills particularly valuable is their applicability across all aspects of life. Whether navigating a difficult conversation with a colleague, supporting a friend through hardship, or resolving conflict within your family, the same core competencies serve you well. The investment you make in developing these abilities pays dividends throughout your personal and professional worlds. The Evolve Method, your emotional intelligence growth plan. Transforming your communication approach requires structure and intention. The Evolve Method provides a framework for continuous improvement in emotional intelligence and empathetic communication skills. This 6-step process helps you turn abstract concepts into concrete daily practices. 1. Evaluate your current capabilities, 1 to 2 days. Select 3 specific areas within emotional intelligence you want to improve. Use self-assessment tools or reflection to establish your baseline. Ask yourself, when do I feel most disconnected from others? And which emotional responses do I struggle to manage? 2. Visualize specific goals. 1 day. Create SMART goals for each area you've identified. For example, I will practice active listening in 3 conversations weekly, focusing solely on understanding before responding. Write these goals down and place them somewhere visible. 3. Observe daily interactions, ongoing, 5 to 10 minutes daily. Implement a daily reflection practice. At day's end, review your communications. Which emotions surfaced? How did you respond? Where did you demonstrate empathy? Where did you miss opportunities? Keep notes in a dedicated journal. 4. Learn from feedback bi-weekly. Identify 2 to 3 trusted individuals who can provide honest feedback about your communication style. Ask specific questions like, did you feel heard in our conversation? Or how did my response make you feel? Accept their insights without defensiveness. 5. Venture into practice sessions, weekly, 30 to 45 minutes. Schedule regular role-playing exercises, focusing on challenging scenarios. Practice responding to difficult emotions, navigating conflicts, or delivering sensitive messages. Record these sessions when possible to review your nonverbal cues. 6. Expand your knowledge, 2 to 3 hours weekly. Dedicate time to learning through podcasts, books, or courses on emotional intelligence. Apply 1 new concept from your learning each week in real interactions and note the outcomes. The beauty of this method lies in its flexibility. You might spend more time in certain phases, depending on your specific needs and circumstances. The key is consistency. Small, regular efforts compound over time into significant improvements. Remember that setbacks are not failures, but opportunities for deeper learning. When you respond ineffectively or miss emotional cues, treat these moments as valuable data rather than disappointments. Each interaction offers new insights that refine your approach. Throughout this audiobook, we've explored the multidimensional nature of effective communication. We began by establishing foundational principles, progressed through various communication contexts, examined how to handle difficult conversations and people, and now conclude with this ongoing journey of emotional development. The skills we've discussed, from active listening and clear expression to emotional regulation and conflict resolution, all interconnect to form a comprehensive approach to human interaction. As you continue to implement these practices, you'll notice not only improved relationships, but also greater self-awareness and personal satisfaction. The most powerful communicators aren't those with the perfect words for every situation, but those who remain perpetually curious about themselves and others. They approach each interaction as an opportunity to understand, connect, and grow. By committing to this mindset, you position yourself to build relationships characterized by mutual respect, authentic understanding, and productive collaboration. Your journey toward masterful communication doesn't end with the conclusion of this audiobook. It's just the beginning. Each conversation becomes a laboratory for practicing what you've learned, each relationship a canvas for applying your evolving skills. Trust the process, celebrate your progress, and embrace the lifelong adventure of becoming a more emotionally intelligent and empathetic communicator. Final words. Communication isn't a destination. It's a lifelong journey of growth and refinement. As we reach the end of our exploration together, I hope you feel equipped with not just knowledge about practical wisdom that will serve you in every conversation, relationship, and interaction that lies ahead. Throughout this audiobook, we've traveled from understanding the foundations of clear communication to navigating the complex emotional landscapes that color our interactions. We've explored how to handle difficult conversations with grace, build deeper connections through active listening, and harness the power of emotional intelligence to create meaningful change in our relationships. The skills you've gained aren't theoretical concepts to be admired from a distance. They're practical tools waiting to be applied in your daily life. When you find yourself facing a challenging conversation with a colleague, remember the conflict resolution framework we discussed. When your partner seems distant, recall the techniques for emotional attunement and creating safe spaces for vulnerability. When leading a team through change, draw upon the principles of clear, empathetic leadership communication. The beauty of communication mastery lies in its universal application. Whether you're negotiating a business deal, resolving a disagreement with a loved one, or simply trying to be understood in a world of noise and distraction, the principles we've explored together will serve you well. From knowledge to action. Learning about communication is only the first step. Transformation happens through consistent application. I encourage you to start small. Choose one skill from this audiobook to practice each week. Perhaps begin with active listening, making a conscious effort to be fully present in your conversations without planning your response while others are speaking. Create accountability for yourself by sharing your communication goals with someone you trust or keeping a journal to track your progress and insights. Celebrate your successes, no matter how small. Notice when a conversation goes better than expected or when you're able to navigate a difficult interaction with more grace than before. Be patient with yourself when you stumble. Communication excellence isn't about perfection. It's about progress and recovery. Remember that becoming a masterful communicator isn't about manipulating others or always getting your way. It's about creating spaces where understanding can flourish, where conflicts can become opportunities for growth, and where relationships can deepen through authentic connection. The ripple effect. As you implement these skills, you'll likely notice something remarkable. When you change how you communicate, you change your world. Your improved communication will create ripple effects far beyond your immediate interactions. Colleagues may begin coming to you to help mediate conflicts. Friends might share more openly, feeling safe in your presence. Leadership opportunities may emerge as others recognize your ability to bring clarity to complex situations. Most importantly, your relationships will likely take on new dimensions of depth and meaning. I would be remiss not to acknowledge that this audiobook cannot cover every communication challenge you'll face. Cultural differences, neurodiversity, and unique personal histories all shape how we communicate in ways that deserve deeper exploration. I encourage you to continue your learning journey, seeking out resources that address the specific communication contexts most relevant to your life. Your communication legacy. As we part ways, I invite you to consider the communication legacy you want to create. How do you want to be remembered as a communicator? What impact do you want your words to have on those around you? The skills you've learned here aren't just about making your life easier. They're about contributing to a world where understanding replaces judgment, where conflicts lead to growth rather than division, and where everyone feels heard. You have within you everything you need to transform your communication and, by extension, your relationships and your life. The path forward isn't always easy, but it is infinitely rewarding. Each time you choose clarity over confusion, empathy over indifference or courage over comfort in your communications, you take one step closer to mastery. Your journey toward communication excellence doesn't end with the conclusion of this audiobook. In many ways, it's just beginning. Take what resonates with you, make it your own, and step confidently into a future shaped by your newfound communication skills. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. The words we speak become the houses we live in. Choose your words with care, listen with compassion, and speak with purpose. For in doing so, you not only change the conversation, you change the world.
We appreciate you tuning in to one of our captivating audiobooks. For more immersive experiences, here is another audiobook we're certain you'll enjoy. Don't forget to show your support by liking this video, sharing what you loved about this audiobook in the comments section below, and subscribing for more captivating audiobooks like this. Thanks for being a part of our audiobook community.